It's a beautiful afternoon here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm very excited that you're all here to learn with us today. As your host, let me walk you through the webinar Geek features. First of all, though, I'd like for you to know you're going to receive a recording of the webinar, certificate of attendance, and a link to the survey. Operation Parent, we're a nonprofit, and it's our mission to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. I hope that you will take a minute and do our quick registration for our October and our November webinars. And then I also want to let you know about a couple of the features today. So we're going to utilize the private chat feature. Want to let you know all attendees are going to be muted during the presentation. We would, however, like to hear from you via the private chat section. You will send both questions and comments privately to us. We've got some awesome handouts lined up for you today. They were sent to you in an email that you received yesterday. You've also received another email today. If you check up here in the platform as well, you can download those handouts while we're live. For those of you joining on our phones, you may need to scroll down just a little bit to hit that download button on the handout. So we have for you lined up a link to the Family Digital Wellness Guide. We also have some articles that Dr. Rich has written, a family guide to digital citizenship, as well as teaching kids and teens the essential digital skills. Along with that, you also have a PDF of today's slides. There'll be a brief survey that's going to pop up directly after the webinar. This is only going to take you about 2 minutes to complete. And I want to let you know that your continued support and encouragement, as well as constructive feedback, is very, very appreciated, and we utilize every word of it to guide our webinar program. If you missed the survey, it's also going to be emailed to you along with the recording and certificate. Now I'm super excited to introduce you to our presenter today, Dr. Michael Rich. He is recognized globally for his acclaimed work as a pediatrician, child health researcher, and children's media specialist. He's the founder of the Digital Wellness Lab, which is on a mission to understand and promote positive and healthy digital experiences for young people. He founded the Clinic for Interactive Media and Internet Disorders, the first evidence-based clinical program designed to address problematic interactive media use. He is a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Society for Health and Adolescent Medicine. Dr. Rich works with families daily to adopt and sustain healthy approaches to engaging with interactive media and technology. Boy, don't we all want that in our own homes? Dr. Rich recently released the Mediatrician's Guide, a joyful approach to raising healthy, smart, kind kids in a screen-saturated world. It's a science-backed approach to give us parents the confidence we need to raise well children in a digital age, which he's graciously agreed to dig into his book here with us today. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Rich. We cannot wait to hear what you've got to say.
Thank you for having me, and I will thank you also for the book giveaway you're offering to all the listeners. So I think that
yes, we're so excited. For anyone who stays with us till the very end, we have 3 copies of your book, as well as Operation Parent handbooks that we will be excited to give away at the end.
And I should also say that if you are not lucky enough to win them, that it is available both in the book form, but also in a Kindle and the Audible form, read by me. So I look forward to hearing all of your responses to the book. I'm hopeful that it will be the kind of guide to raising your digital natives that I hoped it would be. So let's start thinking about today's environment. It's very fraught with concern, with fear, and with guilt. Unfortunately, for the many years that I've been studying screens and how kids use them and the effect on their physical, mental, and social health, it has historically been quite adversarial in the sense that folks like me, who are concerned parents, pediatricians, researchers, have been put in the position of essentially studying what's out there and throwing rocks at the tech and entertainment industry. The Digital Wellness Lab has been formed with the admittedly audacious contrarian approach that if we can give our good, solid foundational research both to the tech and entertainment companies and to those who use their products, that they will start thinking about a second bottom line, which is the wellness of their users. And one of the things that's out there, as I'm sure many of you know, is a lot of argument and discussion at the level of Congress, at the level of courts and litigation to, quote, fix the problem. As a pediatrician and a parent, I have to be much more pragmatic than that and recognize that in the years it will take them to do something that's really effective, kids are still growing up. So we need to develop the skills right now to be able to recognize the positive aspects of these screens and how we use them, as well as being alert for the negatives. So what we'd like to cover is the issue of loneliness, friendships, and relationships, of online influencers, and the issue of sharenting, media influence on substance use, social media and body image, digital wellness, and literacy. Not much, but a little. We will be able to cover a lot of ground that will really just scratch the surface. And I hope to continue the dialogue into the future as we all work our way through the digital ecosystem. So one of the chapters of the book really speaks to how relationships are formed and sustained, both IRL in real life and online. And it really comes down to how we use social media. One of the issues out there, of course, is everyone has a different definition for social media. And the more research we do, the more clinical work we do, the more I am convinced that all media are increasingly social, even to the point where kids will watch Netflix across town or across the country from each other while simultaneously FaceTiming each other. So one of the issues, though, that is really come to the fore with social media is that it's not social media doing things to our young people and to us, but it's what we do with them that can be problematic. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the early uses of social media were very similar to what the corporations do, in the sense that we are using social media to market ourselves to each other, to show pictures of the great vacation we went on, or how wonderful our house is, or dad's new sports car, or my hot new boyfriend. And others come to it seeking connection, seeking relationships, but knowing their whole selves, not just all the great stuff, but also their fears, their concerns, their limitations, and come out of it with this upward social comparison that makes them feel badly about themselves. As it said, compare and despair. And I actually feel that if we can shift from this self-marketing on social media to being truly authentic, that we can actually build good relationships online, not just the superficial relationships that have occurred since friend became a verb. We lost a lot when that happened. So I think that we need to actually look at the way we and the kids we are concerned about actually affect the relationship and how we can be real online. Social media doesn't cause anxiety and depression, but it can accelerate and amplify it, in the sense that issues that came up between teens, between kids, even younger kids, even used to take a while to filter through the communication. And many of those deep thoughts and concerns were written on diaries that were locked in their bedside stands. Now they're being put up on a billboard. And so one of the things that I would say is that while it is unclear on the clinical level whether anxiety and depression have increased recently, it is clear that we have been talking about them more. And we've been talking about them in sometimes in forums that are way too public rather than in the privacy of a clinical relationship. So I think that what we have to recognize is not just the potential hazards of using social media in ways that are essentially self-marketing, but also to recognize its potential for being truly authentic. Remember, the relationships we have in real life, the best ones are always with people who know our limitations, know our fears, and vice versa. And we don't love each other despite these limitations. We love each other because of them in many ways, because it allows us to complete each other. And so I have a dream that someday there will be a child in one country and a child in another country who have authentic relationships online with each other, and their respective leaders will say, we are at war with those people. And those young people will say, I actually know those young people better than I know you, my ostensible leader. And I hope that ultimately we can use social media as an instrument of peace. So we really need to build our social emotional skills and need them to reach digital wellness and balance. And those include effective communication, active listening to each other, respect for others with whom we're communicating, emotional intelligence, and empathy, much of which is hard to communicate in the online space, both because we are unable to read the reactions of those we're communicating with, often because it's asynchronous or because you're only seeing a part of us, as you're seeing a part of me now. We need to be adaptable to each other. We need to problem solve together, and we need to manage our stress together. These skills are often the ones that are most important in what we learn, particularly in the elementary school years. We need to understand that children's first real experience at being an individual is school, at being in a place where they are not an extension of their parents or of their near community, but where they have to build their community. And they have to learn to negotiate with each other. They need to both mentor and receive mentorship, both from their teachers, but also from each other. And ultimately, we have to help them experience gratitude and optimism about the future. We need to be grateful to each other and for each other if we are to succeed as a society, and if we are to maintain our physical, mental, and social wellness within it. One of the concerns that we have had in struggling with this question of smartphones in schools is not just do they distract from our didactic teaching of math, science, English, etc.? But they also kind of undermine the possibility for this social emotional learning if mom or dad is able to say, call up at any point in the day and say, how did you do on that quiz? Do I need to speak to your teacher? What's happening in the playground or the lunchroom? Like Jiminy Cricket sitting on Pinocchio's shoulder. We need to understand that those skills are learned individually, not with parental help. And we can actually serve to interrupt or undermine that learning, which is arguably the most important learning they do in the early years, because they're developing skills that will carry them through their lifetime. So another question that I put into the book, and the title of the chapter is "What's Love Got to Do with IT?" So it played on the Tina Turner song, but also is speaking to IT as a space in which relationships can form, but needs to be well understood in terms of how it relates to truly communicating and connecting with each other. Intimacy between two people should be caring, trusting, and truthful. It's difficult when it starts and continues on the screen. The screen is in some ways a way for people to test the waters, to see if someone is interested in being in a relationship, but it can't get stuck on that screen. It's got to move beyond it to true intimacy, which means in real life relationships, communication and caring in a way that is risky in some ways. And sometimes that risk of intimacy keeps us from moving beyond the screen and worrying that we'll feel awkward, etc. In addition, out there in the entertainment sphere, casual sex is glamorized, making it seem normal to move into sex without developing a trusting relationship, without consent, without condoms or other ways of protecting each other. So one of the things that has unfortunately happened with the dating apps is that it has really turned romantic or sexual encounters into transactions, not expressions of love and trust and intimacy. So I think one of the things that we can do with our kids is when we co-view a movie or television program that portrays sex and intimacy in this way, is to work it through with them, discuss it with them, and actually help them understand that this is not necessarily the way they're going to experience it. Many kids get into trouble because they think that falling in love and having sex should be easy and smooth, and it never is. So they feel awkward, they feel out of touch, and often they miss opportunities for true intimacy. So co-viewing has teachable moments. And I often say actually that for children and adolescents, every moment is a teachable moment. The difference is what you learn in that moment. And if you're learning entirely from what you see on screens without any input from parents, educators, and others, you can come to a very false image of the world. So the number one career goal today in young people is to be an influencer. That's a person who has a large and engaged social media following and can influence the opinions, behaviors, and purchase decisions of their followers. It is intriguing to me that what we're seeing is that the kids want to be influencers, but they don't necessarily know what they want to influence, who they want to influence. They just want to be influencers. But there are presences on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram that are out there making literally millions of dollars, even very young. And they are often pushing not authentic issues, but issues that are driven by their commercial relationships. So we are really looking at consuming here, and much of the social media influencing environment is what I call consumerist pornography, in the sense that it is a limited look with a very transactional component to it that helps people or encourages people to fall in love with a product or a platform of some kind. As with anything in this very overloaded information sphere, the edgier your message is, the more it penetrates, the more it cuts through the fog of everything else. And that often means that these are personalities that turn toxic. That's what gets attention. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about with my own patients, actually, is that they will post things on social media that are edgy and cool, like a 14-year-old posing in a bikini holding a beer can, that they don't realize that what they post there goes far, goes fast, and is sticky. The edgier it is, the more likely it is that someone will hold on to it somewhere. And already we are having young people whose social media posts get included in their admissions folder when they apply to college, or are discoverable when they apply for jobs. So I usually encourage my patients to observe what I call the grandma rule, which is, don't post anything online you don't want grandma to see, because she can. And this is because while kids are less concerned about breaking their parents' rules, they do want grandma's unconditional love and respect. And this actually is a way of projecting into the future who they want to be, what kind of digital footprint that they want to establish. So yes, today's version of a movie star or an athlete is now influencer. So when a child tells you this, ask them what is the goal of influencing, because that often is not thought out at all, really. Where do they want to push people? Why do they want to push people? And ultimately, is it helping them or harming them? These are questions we actually put to the tech industry as well, as I will talk about a little later, which is we need to add to our activities online the idea that there's a second bottom line. It's not just clicks and eyeballs and dollars. It is also the wellness of all of us who live in this digital ecosystem. And we need to take that into account increasingly, both from the user side, but also from the tech side. So a big issue now is what's called sharenting, or sharing pictures of your children, which is an extension of this self-marketing that goes on. It's posting pictures of our children online instead of keeping a baby book. It does create the digital footprint. And there are a number of child influencers that are making a lot of money for their parents. But the real concern is they are often around unboxing videos, or showing the toys that they want, or how excited these toys make them. And I'm sure some of you have run across some of them. We have to be very careful about both showing that to our children, but also questioning the motivations of the parents who are putting them up there. And the things that push them to do this are often personal profit, building a larger following, and posting their child's life really online, to the point where there's some kids who've gotten really in a terrible shape, that there is now a cottage industry in basically erasing our presence online. So let's think really carefully about what we share and in the formats in which we share it, not only to deal with stolen identities and frauds, but also showing pictures that may end up on pedophilic sites, in pornographic images. In fact, we've already had cases where middle school boys have used AI, generative AI, to take their classmates' school photos and turn them into child pornography. When parents are using their devices and screens all the time, children learn that. I often say kids listen to about 1% of what we say, but 100% of what we do. Adolescents look back on their baby pictures put up by their parents and actually find them really cringy, and often ask that they be taken down. So I think we have to be very aware that what we put up there, even if they're trying to just show pictures to grandma of the baby as they grow, is essentially putting it up there on a billboard. And we have to understand the outcomes that may occur when either the parents are pushing the kids' images or the kids are doing it themselves. In many ways, it's the beginning of what can be actually a very narcissistic relationship with the online space. And that is the desire that drives much of the desire to be an influencer. So in our chapter on use of substances, called Wirelessly Wired, it really discusses how we are perceiving the use of substances, both in entertainment. I mean, for years there have been issues about the portrayals of smoking and alcohol use, even in the days where television was the only screen we used. And what's really interesting about that is that what was more potent than direct advertising was basically brand placement. So when you see a movie and a movie star that you like drinks a certain beer or smokes a certain cigarette, that had more of an influence on it than any direct advertising does. When it enters the social media space, which is much more informal, which feels much more intimate, like you know this person who you are on social media with, it is even more potent. They're sharing how to be cool. They speak from the perspective that everyone is doing it. And they imply, if not explicitly say, this is what attractive and successful people do. You do not see online, except for groups like the Truth Initiative. Most of what you see online ignores the negative consequences, as if they don't exist. But the Truth Initiative has been for decades now offering the counter truth, or the real truth, if you will, of what the outcomes of use of substances can be. And I urge you to use their material as a wonderful guide toward the goals, really, of Operation Parenting. So, alcohol. one of the things that has arisen and actually is deeply penetrated into the screen environment is the idea of alcopops, basically soda flavored items like Mike's Hard iced tea and Twisted Tea and Mike's Hard Lemonade. These are building brand awareness and loyalty very, very early in the form of something that is sweet and is not so different from the non-alcoholic sodas that they drink. There are hard seltzers, White Claw, Truly, High Noon, etc., that are, as you can see here, branded with very bright, engaging colors and are treated online as if they were risk-free. But what it does is it connects them with an ongoing brand such as Smirnoff, which is not in its alcopop form, is not containing alcohol, is not containing vodka, but Smirnoff is a vodka maker, and it provides what they often call a gateway drug to harder liquor. Similar things are happening with cannabis as it becomes increasingly legalized for recreational as well as for medical use. It is being presented as a normal part of adulthood. There are open advertisements online. If you go online to look at an old Saturday Night Live scene, oftentimes a cannabis commercial will come up before it, offering to deliver it to your home. And it is in some ways occupying the space that cigarettes used to occupy for kids, which was, if you want to be more mature, if you want to be cool, you can use this. It does harness the adolescent drive for autonomy, to be independent of parents, independent of teachers, and portrays that substance use as an adult behavior that kids should emulate and actually hide from their parents and teachers, because after all, cannabis, like alcohol, is only available legally to those over 21. So it feels like a friend is sharing it with you online, and thus is more powerful than advertising. It harnesses the peer power and becomes a super peer power when it is put online, particularly if it is associated with either a glamorous individual or a glamorous lifestyle. And there's a deeper, darker concern online, and that is how these issues can be, or these devices and these platforms can be used in nefarious ways. Snapchat, as probably you know, is a messaging and social media environment that actually disappears after a while. And it became used as a tool for people selling much more potent drugs, including Chinese fentanyl, which, as you can see from this image, looks like Smarties or Sweet Tarts. And what they do is they reach out to the kids in this disappearing messaging app, but direct them to the dark web, where they can buy fentanyl and other hard drugs. One of the concerns here is that much of this fentanyl is wildly inaccurate in its dosage. Fentanyl is an incredibly potent opioid that can kill even with a single dose, if that single dose is such that is fatal, essentially, particularly to those who are naive to the use of fentanyl. So oftentimes the fentanyl overdoses we see are with kids who are using it for the first time and have not developed any kind of tolerance to it. We have to be aware of the fact that the terminologies they use, the words they use, and especially the emojis they use are constantly shifting, because as authorities learn what they are saying, learn what they are doing, they switch to the next one. So be very careful. We can never be totally sure what's being said here. And in my practice, what I do actually is I ask the kids I care for what the current slang is, what the current emojis are, so that they can help give witness to those of us who are trying to prevent and intervene on these uses, to kind of be at the cutting edge. The cutting edge is moving fast, and we need to stay on it very, very, very regularly. Another major issue, and one that came up with the so-called Facebook papers, is body image, and how young women in particular, but increasingly young men as well, look at media in ways that can affect their lifestyles, affect their own image of their own body. Media objectifies beauty as defined in many ways by thinness. It actually gives important health information in often very negative ways, like you can never be too rich or too thin. And there are online sites that encourage restrictive eating disorders, not as an illness, but as a chosen lifestyle. And it's really important to see and hear how kids are thinking about themselves, and move them away as much as we can from objectification, which the media, the commercial media, try to do. And as I spoke to earlier, excuse me, about the narcissism of selfies. You often see many young people taking selfies, mugging for them, the duck face, as they say, to kind of create their own media image in the image of celebrities or others. Unfortunately, I've even had young women patients of mine say that their goal is to be a porn star because they feel that that is a way to make a lot of money, having fun, and they are really completely unaware of how that self-objectification, that treating of one's own body as all they have to offer to the world, can really erode your self-esteem and your mental health. So we talked a little bit about upward social comparison and body image. There are a lot of body image disturbances, small and large, along a spectrum, that young women in particular are troubled by. We have had children as young as 6 and 7 on diets because they thought they were too fat. And of course, the body, as you mature, changes in different ways. They sometimes shoot up very tall, or they get very heavy for their height before they shoot up very tall. There are differences between the genders. There is gender questioning often, which is frequently normal at various stages of growth and development. And unfortunately, there are commercial enterprises that target this kind of insecurity and self-consciousness of adolescence and pre-adolescence, to get them to buy their products, whether they be diet pills or cosmetics or weight loss strategies. There's a lot of filtering. There's a lot of photoshopping going on, and it is very competitive in terms of looks. But at the same time, we don't want to undermine their healthy behaviors with athletics, etc. The problem is these are often at war with each other. The body that is most conducive to effective athletic performance is not always the one that is portrayed as attractive. So social media is not inherently harming young people, as we talked about. It is how they're using it that can be problematic. They communicate with images rather than text. Yes, they Photoshop each other and themselves. They compare and despair, mostly around very superficial images of themselves, both images that they portray in images, but also images that they portray in how they talk about themselves and what they post. There are pro-ana or pro-anorexia and pro-mia or pro-bulimia sites who are presenting not only unhealthy images to aspire to, but actually coaching toward unhealthy nutritional behaviors, from restricting food to vomiting up the food that they do eat. While all of this is driven in many ways by anxiety and a self-loathing, if you will, it is presented as desirable and even competitive in what they are portraying. And I've actually worked with some of the social media companies to help them determine what to deplatform or take off of their social media, because it is presenting unhealthy behaviors as not only normative, but to be aspired to. So one of the things that we do at the Digital Wellness Lab is seek to both define and work toward digital wellness, which we do define as an intentional state of physical, mental, and social health that occurs with mindful engagement in the digital environment. In other words, instead of mindlessly doing so and doom scrolling, it is really more about using your digital environment to seek out the information that you need, to challenge it and say, does this make sense? Does this fit with my understanding of the world? To share it with others, including and especially parents and teachers and other adults, to kind of level set and understand what's going on. And I think one of the things that the adults like us need to be aware of is that they don't see the virtual world versus the real world. They don't see online versus offline. They live in a continuous physical digital environment that they move in and out of very, very easily and seamlessly. And that as a result, screen time can no longer effectively be measured because of the way we use it. It's not like in the days of television where there were shows of a specific length on at a certain time and we could actually measure it. But now screens are in virtually every environment we've built, in our pockets, on our wrists, and we move in and out of it, of the digital space, totally freely. So now, instead of talking about screen time limits, since we cannot measure them at all, we actually are promoting conscious, dedicated non-screen time. There are obvious areas where there should be no screens, such as the bedroom during sleep time, the dining room during meal time. A sit-down family meal every day is the single most important thing you can do, not just for your child's nutrition, but for their mental health. We have to understand that we really need to move to a measurable and conscious non-screen portion of their day, which can be taking time for strenuous physical activity, for a walk in the woods, to spend green time in nature rather than screen time. But we can no longer limit screen time, which, quite frankly, even in the days of television, didn't even work. And so I think we have to be very careful about how we do this. And part of what that is, part of how we do this is by building digital literacy. When he was founding our country, 200 some years ago, Thomas Jefferson determined that a literate citizenry is a good citizenry, and thus set up the public education system. We now are dealing with young people who are gaining more than 95% of their information not in print, but on screens. So we need to have that same level of literacy, both for reading and for writing, as in receiving and creating on screen, and bring the natural skepticism of adolescence to that content and to marketers the way they bring it to their parents every day. To ask those questions of who created this message, what did they want their viewers to do in response to it? Critical thinking is actually day-to-day cognitive behavioral therapy, where we are comparing what we are seeing to what we know. That critical viewing, critical thinking is a very protective factor for these young people. And this is something that, while we try to push the tech companies and entertainment companies to do, really is a community and family responsibility. We cannot wait for Congress to fix things. We cannot wait for the courts and litigation to fix things. We need to help these kids do well now. And what I often say is that the most important software for protecting your child from screen-based problems sits between your child's ears. And it is what we teach them, what we give them, to assess what they are receiving and see how it fits into their view of the world, to share it with family and teachers, etc., to really learn how to manage this environment in ways that are healthy, smart, and empathetic to their fellow man. So we talk about the 5 M's of digital wellness. The first is to model the behavior on screens that you want to see in your kids. So don't be telling them to turn off their video game while reading that all-important email on one smartphone. As I said before, they listen to about 1% of what we say, but 100% of what we do. When they want a new device or platform or application, sit down with them and mentor them. The reason I use the word mentor instead of teach is teaching is often perceived as one way, from the parent or teacher to the child. Mentors learn as much from their mentees as the mentees learn from the mentor. So parents are often reluctant to sit down with their child and explore the smartphone they want, explore the social media platform they want, because they feel that they are at a disadvantage to the child's knowledge of that space. It is okay to learn from your child and learn these programs together. But I've had more than a few parents tell me that they are more nervous and more dreading the internet talk than they are the sex talk, because rightly or wrongly, they think they know something about sex, but they feel they don't know very much about the internet. So it's very important to start that dialogue around the digital environment, the digital tools, with the child when they get those tools, and really be in the conversation so that as time goes on, they can remain a presence in their child's digital life, and a resource to them rather than just policing them. And that leads right into the third M, which is that they need to be able to monitor their child's screen use. This is the one that parents and kids push back against the hardest. The kids, because they want their privacy. The parents, because they don't feel they have the time and sometimes the knowledge to be aware of what's going on in the digital space with their child. But if the parents have usernames and passwords for their child's digital use and have the ability to monitor that child, the child's behavior changes in response to that, much the way random drug testing affects workers in the workplace. Now, once you get those three pieces in place, the child is able to work toward mastery of these environments, that is using these tools really effectively and purposefully, but also knowing when they're not the best tool for the job and putting them away. And that allows them and us all to make memories. We don't make memories of what we do online. We make memories of what we do with other people. And that includes, even quiet things like a walk in the woods with grandpa and a discussion, and dance parties, and even making spaghetti sauce and spilling it all over the kitchen floor. These are the memories that we hold close. These are the memories of each other and of our families that are really important. Memories that are made in free play are far more important than memories that are made in Roblox. So to review those, model, setting a good example for your kids, mentor, create a space for open, non-judgmental conversations about what they see and do online. And that goes forward. It keeps parents in their children's digital space, not as cops, but as supporters of success. And if they are able to monitor and they see children's behavior changing, that is a good time to explore what's going on in the digital space and help the child manage it in ways that are healthy and effective. Remember to spend non-screen time together. That's way better than limiting, which we can't do, screen time, but really spending that non-screen time together at dinner, overnight, in sleep time. There's no business for screens to be there, and help them take control of their tech use instead of banning or mandating. To help them plan how they will spend their time. We all could be better at time management, but let's do this in an open and purposeful way, to realize that they have only a 24-hour a day, that they need to fit in their sleep, their strenuous physical exercise, their homework, and their meal times, and really emphasize that their privacy needs to be projected into the future. Kids don't effectively have any sense of privacy until their mid to late 20s, when their prefrontal cortex finishes developing. And I think it's really important that that executive function not be expected of kids who haven't developed it yet. So we need to scaffold it. We need to help them understand how to protect their images and their texts in such a way that does not reflect badly on them, either in the moment or into the future. Throughout the book, I have what I call media prescriptions around these issues. I don't have the time to go into them in detail now, but I would strongly encourage you to look at those and think through ways in which we can parent effectively in the media space. I often encourage parents and families to move from media use rules to expectations. There's several reasons for that. One is that in the family community, expectations are had by everyone of each other. So this helps the parents model that behavior for their kids. I sometimes ask kids in my exam room, once their parents are out of the room, I ask them, what could your parents do better? And in many cases, the first thing they say is pay more attention to me, be more present for me. Actively help them to manage their time on social media, to balance it with other activities. Help them find a healthy and happy medium. Remember that we brought these kids into the world because we wanted to discover them. We wanted to, enjoy the newness, the freshness, the creativity, which sometimes is different than us and in many ways should be celebrated. We should let go of the guilt that we did things wrong, that we gave our kids a smartphone or that we let them on social media. They are okay, and they are going to be okay if we can learn to effectively parent them and teach them in the digital space, to help them embrace the positive and understand and mitigate the negative. They will be exposed to all of it. So listen to them when they talk and model for them listening to us. And one of the things I push is, instead of seeking out killer apps, to develop our killer bees. Those are: be balanced in our screen time and our non-screen time, be mindful of our use of screens, but also of what goes on when we don't use screens. And most importantly, be present in their lives. Put our phones down when we are with them. Listen to them, look at them, observe them, and be there for them. So what can parents do in that space? Well, I'm offering to you the Family Digital Wellness Guide, which is constantly updated on the digitalwellnesslab.org website. It's a guide for helping kids of all ages, starting from infancy right through to early adulthood, to build healthy, safe digital habits and learn to use the digital space to enhance their humanity, to increase their knowledge, and build their connection with each other. And it's available in both English and Spanish. There's also homework for you as parents, which is: how do we enhance our skills and our teens that help them? How do we encourage discovery of the positive, and let the teens teach us? I often will say, sit down next to your child and play that video game that you think is awful, and learn from them what engages them. You are also showing them that you love and respect them when you do that, and make these experiences that you share together, that you think about together, with your more mature executive functions, and approach all of this with not just humanity, but with humility and with humor. Laugh at mistakes and move on. Don't feel guilty. Don't be worried, but just model that for them and with them, being balanced, mindful, and present. How can we approach this as communities? Well, one of the things that the Digital Wellness Lab has done is that we presented, actually, from the main stage at Cannes in France, at the Cannes Lions Festival, what communities can do and what tech companies can do. We ask them to aspire to tune their products for emotional well-being, to listen to and act on what we hear from those who have encountered harm online, and that we should all commit to openness in terms of our discussion of what is working, what is not working. These aspirational pledges are actually available online at inspiredinternet.org, and we seek organizations and groups that seek to sign on to actually building a better digital ecosystem by following these three principles. What can schools do? Well, we have to build media literacy into our curricula. It affects everything that they learn. It's not just about online safety, but it is about establishing trust. It is about establishing communication and connectedness that is truly informing and enhancing their humanity. Help them build their self-esteem rather than get caught up in self-objectification. I think that it's really important to develop an awareness of what is going on social media, that they are not falling into the trap of upward social comparison and unhealthy behaviors. I want to offer to you the resources of and the information we've gleaned at the Clinic for Interactive Media and Internet Disorders, or CIMAID, where we evaluate and treat the young people whose excessive online activities have caused problems with things like sleep, school, academic functioning, and social functioning, and a whole variety of aspects of their physical and mental health. We also are helping parents and kids understand the difference between what I call the next normal, not the new normal, because today's new normal is tomorrow's old normal. We need to be understanding of the fact that this is a moving, evolving digital space, but also that kids are maybe using it in ways that appear to parents to be excessive, but are actually quite effective. So we're really on the outlook for and helping others to understand what is problematic and even pathologic in this space, and how we can help kids step back from it in ways that are effective. And so finally, I am grateful to to Operation Parent to really offer to you the full book. I've tried in these few minutes to encapsulate some key components of the Mediatrician's Guide, A Joyful Approach to Raising Healthy, Smart, Kind Kids in a Screen-Saturated World. I would love to pass this on to Michelle, but also to mention that I believe that QR code on screen right now will take you right to a site where you can acquire the book.
It sure does. Thank you, Dr. Michael Rich, for all this information. We appreciate it. We invite you now to register for the book giveaway. And so you can use this quick pop-up to do that. You utilize the QR code. And then now is also a wonderful time to submit your questions for Dr. Rich also.
And I would also, actually, maybe we should go back and offer all of these sites for our information from the Digital Wellness Lab. We are present where the kids are on Facebook. Well, kids aren't so much on Facebook because their parents are, but Instagram, LinkedIn, and ways to email us. All of our resources on our website are available to you free of charge. And if they trigger any questions that they don't answer, please reach out to us. We are constantly upgrading and improving and increasing our database of research, but we also want it to be really useful to you where the rubber meets the road, as it were. And one of the other resources that is available to you that I think you should take a good look at, and this QR code will lead you to them, are the many resources of the Parent Handbook, with both school-based or elementary school-based information, but also middle and high school focused information on everything from cell phones to social media, from gaming to sexting and pornography, and really discussing the issues of screen time in a way that is flexible and acceptable to the kids, because I can't emphasize enough the importance of shifting from rules to expectations, because when rules are broken, parents are angry. But when you don't meet their expectations, they're disappointed in you. And frankly, that lingers far more than the anger of a rule broken, because in many ways our expectations are of each other and how we build a strong family and a strong community.
That's right. And we're hoping for parents that our handbooks will be a quick and easy resource for them to just dig into all of those topics that you mentioned. So again, I want to remind you, now is the perfect place to submit your questions, and we're looking forward to getting to those. The resource that Dr. Rich mentioned is our Operation Parent Handbooks. Parents, grandparents, foster parents, it's an easy, flexible, accessible resource for you, very affordable, $14.99 for the middle and high, $9.99 for the elementary. You've already seen the topics that we cover, but they are mentioned up on the slide as well. This is a quick pop-up that would allow you to just look at the variety of resources, see what matches with your family. I know many of you on with us today have looked at the handbooks already, and I just encourage you to maybe share them with another family member that could utilize it, either a younger parent in your family or a friend or relative that you haven't thought about yet. Our TNT program is for middle schoolers. It's a comprehensive event package which teaches middle schoolers about drug facts, but more importantly, it also helps them practice their refusal skills, drug refusal skills. So this is a comprehensive event package. It comes with everything you would need: the posters, the banners, the promotional materials, everything that would be a lot of work for you in your community to put on a drug prevention program. We put it together, even a training manual for the facilitators, and you can just tap into this program and have just a really super fun, powerful event in your community. Our community advocates are available to talk with you about how handbooks are being used creatively across the country, as well as our newer TNT Trends and Training program. We also would be honored if you would join us for Give for Good Louisville. It's happening on September the 12th. And as a nonprofit, donations are vital for us to keep offering great programming and free webinars like this. So we really would love it if you would also follow us on our social media channels on the 17th. Our handle is Operation Parent across all of our platforms, and you can enjoy seeing our staff, our team get pied in the face as we work towards our significant goal for September the 12th, right around the corner. And then here's where you can follow us if you want to just watch us participate in Give for Good Louisville, and along with you raise some really good funds to keep this programming going across the country. So now I want to just remind you that our next webinars coming up are on October the 8th, and we will be working with the Kentucky American Pediatrics Association of Pediatrics on October the 8th to dig more into those digital media guidelines and give you additional tips and tricks to utilize in your home. Like Dr. Rich said, this digital media is not going anywhere. The best we can do is just keep on keeping up with it. And so we're going to keep tackling the issue and hope that you'll join us again October the 8th. And then as well as November the 12th to talk about how to start talking with kids earlier about impaired driving and how to stay safe. So I am super honored now to start the Q&A, Dr. Rich. So we have several in, and I'll just go for it. Just dig right in. So one of our parents said, trying to reach that intentional state of health and mindfulness when services like apps are designed basically to combat that and keep us on them and hooked, not necessarily allowing us to be maybe mindful, present for our kids. So what do you recommend specifically to parents who wish to just inspire their teens to be cognizant of how much time they're spending on the apps and more mindful?
I think this is going back to the three M's, the initial M's, which is, yes, I think that's absolutely right that those algorithms are hooking us in, and it affects what we model. So I think that one of the interesting things that one could do is say, you know what, when I'm with my kids, I put my phone down. Remember, they are really the most important job we do, and the job that we have the least instruction for. So I think that if we are on Instagram looking at recipes or whatever, even for dinner, positive things, to do that with our kids, but also most importantly, show them how we put it down, how we focus on them, how we listen to them. And here's the other thing that I strongly encourage is that I think we need to bring back boredom. We have gotten in a bad habit of not being able to get onto an elevator or a bus or anything without pulling our phones out and looking at our phones. And we have to remember that boredom is the crucible of creativity and imagination and innovation, not because we get ideas from other people so much as that we have the space to work in, to be creative in, and that space feels a little uncomfortable. I really encourage people to control our devices rather than letting them control us. And one of the reasons why we don't talk about excessive use as addiction, there are a lot of reasons for it. Well, one of the key reasons for it is when it's an addiction, we blame it on the thing out there. We don't take responsibility for our own behavior with it. It is not an addiction in terms of the same way that, say, heroin or alcohol or nicotine can be. It is a series of choices we make. And if we can blame it on the smartphone or blame it on social media or blame it on the digital algorithms out there, we feel like we're exonerated. But these are actually tools that we need to know how to use effectively, but also know how to not use effectively.
How much screen time do you recommend for our middle schoolers?
I don't recommend any particular amount of screen time, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's because we can't measure screen time the way they use it. Secondly, many of them are getting homework online. So what I actually recommend is dedicated non-screen time, dedicated time where they're not on screens, most specifically during that all-important family sit-down meal that is important for their nutrition and their mental health. I'm very serious about saying no screens should be in the bedroom during sleep time. I use the term sleep time, not bedtime, because so many bring screens in the bed with them. And yes, your kid will say, but it's my alarm clock, as if you can't go and buy an alarm clock for $5. So I strongly recommend that everyone's screens, including mom and dad's, be charged overnight, say in the kitchen, away from anybody, because it disrupts not only the quantity of sleep, because they stay up late, staring to the blue melatonin suppressing light of the screen, but they often allow themselves to be interrupted by notifications at night. Even when that device is turned off and on silent, it is a distraction and it disrupts sleep. So it needs to be put away. But I also strongly encourage it being put away during family time. this is when we have conversations. This is when we understand what's going on with each other. And one of the problems with these devices is that they can be so narrowly broadcasting to individuals that it becomes isolating rather than connecting.
Didn't you teach us that teens today are getting over 250 interruptions today?
Oh, they're getting even more than that in some cases. There was actually an experiment done now 5 years ago when there was even less digital saturation by a middle school teacher who actually had all the kids put their phones up on the desk and turn it on loud and make a mark on paper whenever they had any kind of a notification or a signal. And in the space of one class period, one 45-minute class period with one class of 22 students, there were over 1,100 notifications that came
Wow.
in
Yeah, I
one
believe
class.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So this, is a good example of why we want to actually really think about the role that phones have, not only in school, but in our private lives as well. That we need to understand that we are now in an attention economy, and we often give away our attention to corporations who turn them into billions of dollars, some of
Mhm.
which they turn around and invest in grabbing our attention more.
So this is a little bit of a different direction, but a parent of a third grader is asking how you start talking young to give them the skills to critically evaluate influencers. So they're starting to look at that critically.
I usually tell parents that when we should start teaching media literacy and digital literacy is when we start giving them media and digital tools. That means all the way back to Sesame Street, sitting with them and discussing what they are getting them in the habit of critical thinking and critical viewing. So, at any time we can start being conscious about what we are offering our children and how it might manipulate them, and to talk to them. Third graders are really smart. And so talk to them explicitly about, okay, who do you think made this video or this blog? What do you think they wanted you to do once you saw it? Who, or actually, what does it portray? But also, what does it not portray? What truths does it not show that are important to remember, and to have them develop the habit of being skeptical, not swallowing it whole hog and say this is exactly the truth, but understanding that there were people behind it who were making this to achieve a certain goal that they may be part of or choose not to be.
We have several grandparents on with us today. And so one of the grandparents is asking, how can I best be support and influence on my grandchild with social media?
Well, I think that one of the things that's really interesting here is that grandparents often see things that the parents don't. That when the parent who is busy, turns to the child and hands them a tablet just so they can get a shower or make dinner or whatever. So grandparents who grew up in a different era without smartphones and tablets can actually model behavior and say, okay, if they're with the young people, say, let's go for a walk. I've got something to show you, or something of that. So instead of directly critiquing their own child's behavior as a parent, it's really about offering alternatives. It's really about saying, hey, there are other fun things we can do. And grandparents have the fortunate position of being able to influence in positive ways, and not kind of get into the arguments that parents often have to get into with their kids around their screen use.
Yeah, grandparents are so good about the one-on-one time, and they have the time to do the activities. And like you taught us, you've said it many times when we were working on this production, that they're not going to remember the games that they played over and over again later. They're going to remember the one-on-one and the activities and the fun things that you've done.
Absolutely.
Okay, one more question for you. Is there anything online that you would recommend for monitoring and blocking certain apps? Are there any blocking strategies that you like?
There are a number of technical or software fixes for this. In my experience, I hate to say it, in my experience, the way they are used is that parents sort of, as a turnkey, put it on there and expect the technology to take care of it for the young person. Mm-hmm. So as a result, I have not run across one that I think can do that. But what it does is it gives parents a false sense of security that everything's okay because they have NetNanny or Bark or one of these things. I will go back to what I said earlier, I believe, which is the most important software for protecting your child's physical, mental, and social health online or on screen sits between your kids' ears. And that really depends on us as parents, as grandparents, as educators of various kinds, to model that behavior, to mentor them in that behavior, and to teach them to be good digital citizens, in many ways by what we model, but also by realizing that we need to be flexible and resilient and responsive to the next normal. We don't want to let the online space or the internet or games become like rock and roll, which kids like even more because their parents hate it and don't understand it. We need to be present with them in understanding this, and it allows us to learn from them what they're encountering and not being judgmental about it. One of the real concerns I have is around issues where kids feel they need to hide things from their parents, mm-hmm. Which is where they get into trouble with sexual exploitation, where they get in trouble with substance use, et cetera, when we frame this as good versus bad, as opposed to healthy versus unhealthy, which is measurable. It allows the young people to say, I came across something online that really weirded me out, that really upset me, that scared me, that confused me, and to share it with their parents as opposed to saying, yes, oh, mom and dad are going to be upset with me for this. I better not show them.
Yep. Be their safe place to land every time. Yes.
Exactly.
And thank you so much for sharing your life's work with us, what you've learned from your patients, reminding us to keep the balance, strive for the balance. We can do it. It just takes a lot of work with how strong the technology and things are.
Work and patience and a sense of humor.
Sense of humor, patience, and just keep trucking, right?
Yeah.
Keep trucking and trying. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, we appreciate you so much, and we appreciate all of you for joining us today. We'll look forward to seeing you on October the 8th, and we invite you to follow us on our social media and join us on the Louisville Give for Good if you can. Thanks so much.
Be well, Elle.
Be well. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.